水を汚すものに死を。我らは人の営みを守護する意志。侵略者はビルイカ・アトルまで吹っ飛ばす。どう？見惚れちゃった？
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Summer Tenochtitlan. She's a limited 4-star moon cancer introduced in the 1-2 punch of Celeb Summer Experience and Archetype Inception. Much like with CL, I took her to 120 on my JP account. Because I have an illness. Can't control myself. But unlike with CL, I've come to regret my choice. In the time since Mexico City Chan's release, I used her about as much as Summer Kiara. Less even. So where did it all go wrong? Looking at some of Tenochtitlan's tools, you wouldn't think she's a stinker out of the gate. Summer Wars, for instance, is a 3-turn taunt that comes with a 50% defense buff. It's also got a reactive effect to give her 3 turns of NP damage when she's struck. For boss fights and 6 enemy encounters, she can leverage this to force enemies to both power her up and donate charge via defensive NP gain. Not to mention this helps her screen for her more fragile allies. 50% is also a very nice number for a defense buff. Not only does it provide significant damage reduction on its own, but if you found another 50%, Tenochtitlan could just no-sell incoming damage. Even new players have access to Waver. They can provide 30% defense across your frontline. Mash also has multiple sources of defense, whether from her Noble Phantasm or a skill in her Galahad and Paladin forms. If you're running Tenochtitlan just to soak damage and not attack, then you should consider using one of the defense craft essences, Holy Shroud of Magdalene against men, and Iron Will training otherwise. Next, let's look at her Noble Phantasm. Armored Tenochtitlan is an AoE quick attack that provides preemptive invuln pierce and fixed magnitude anti-supergiant damage. This is super effective, so it only applies to her Noble Phantasm. After the hit, Armored Tenochtitlan applies a defense down. It overcharges a single turn of preemptive NP damage. It's a bit jank. Supergiant enemies do show up, but mostly as single target bosses in the story or mid-bosses in farming nodes. There are some Supergiant servants, but they're extremely rare, and none are in the Berserker or Avenger classes. It also doesn't help that because the defense drop happens after you attack, you effectively lose that value in farming runs. This has the effect of relegating Tenochtitlan to specific multi-boss or boss plus trash style fights. The combination of an AoE attack and defensive focus make her look like Andromeda, except Tenochtitlan is cooldown dependent, while Andromeda is more charge dependent to maintain her defense buff. Summer Wars is on a 6-turn cooldown, which means your coverage is going to be a bit questionable, but you can set yourself up for a relatively quick second wind if you play your cards right. First of all, you're going to want a Pen 5. I'd even take it over a Pen 2 if you plan to use Tenochtitlan anytime soon. It's not because CDR is super broken on her, but she kinda shoots herself in the foot when it comes to the charge department. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Moon Rabbit, not to be confused with next year's Summer Shiki, is a skill that grants 3 turns of quick and buster performance along with a single turn of evasion. Specifically for Bunny Servant allies, it also gives 3 turns of crit damage and 1 turn of cooldown reduction. You wanna know something fucked up? Summer Tenochtitlan is a Bunny Servant, but only in her 3rd ascension. This means her sundress and normal swimsuit ascensions are straight up worse in terms of gameplay. Now if you're dicking around in low stake nodes, then you won't need the CDR, but it does suck that locking in means changing her back to Ascension 3 each time. As for the other Bunny Servants, some standouts include Christmas Astolfo and Lancer Skak in her Bunny Girl costume. Both versions of Anne and Mary qualify in their 3rd ascensions, but they're enmity servants who want to stay at very low health, so they're tricky to play around. Maybe you could use Chengong to forcibly pop their guts and then have Tenochtitlan taunt up, but you're gonna have an awful time finding enough charge to keep everyone well fed. Summer Castoria is another notable bunny, but she has better things to do than slum it up with Tlaloc. Perks of being an art servant. Now you might think, alright, so she's not the greatest servant, but she seems usable at least. Nothing amazingly exploitable, but nothing atrocious either. Brace yourself, because now it's time to talk about Squall Panic. This is a 3-turn party attack buff and 1k heal per turn. Not bad. It comes with a battery too, 20% for the whole frontline. At level 1, right? Nope. 20% forever. Remember when I said that a Pen 2 isn't the highest priority on Tenochtitlan? This is why. Unless you're running a CE with at least 60% starting charge, she requires external help to NP on turn 1. In the early game you might be able to leverage someone like Waver to help out, but as you fill your roster out, you'll notice that the currently optimal quick support, Summer Scotty, only hands out charge in 50% lump payments. This means that in your average farming run, if Tenochtitlan is using something like Traces, she's better off not using Squall Panic until turn 2, so she can try to make up any charge shortfall. Instead, you have Scotty top her up on turn 1. It's awkward and clumsy, and it pretty much guarantees you'll be swapping in a 3rd charger, Caster Scotty, Oberon, or even Waver depending on your roster. But next year you get a somewhat more flexible frontline option in the form of Summer Tiamat. Her battery's 30% party-wide, and she also has a 10% charge regen effect. This means you can use a pen too and still get an even 50%, but you likely still have to save Squall Panic for a follow-up turn. Summer Tiamat also has party healing, purge resistance, and specifically on her NP, a party-wide invuln, so she's a much better fit for Tenochtitlan's attritional playstyle than the Scotties. Not to be confused with the Saudis. Squall Panic has one final effect, and it's a real head-scratcher. It gives your enemies a 10% attack buff across their entire frontline. Now 10% is small potatoes by buff standards, not much better than a passive. But like why? It's still more damage that you're taking. Is Tlaloc jealous of Kiyohime? Does she aspire to suck as much as her idol? The one silver lining in all this is that there's a genre of extremely narrow buff purge codes. In this case, we're looking for the kind that removes attack buffs. Holy Paper Bag and Tengu's Fan do this while also giving crit damage. And the Aconite Witch's Command Seal is locked to arts cards, but purges both attack and defense buffs. For non-purge options, consider a heal code to top off. Pygmalion Chisel Out has both crit and healing, while Child of the Tundra cleanses and heals. For craft essences, Tenochtitlan's charge situation makes things pretty awkward at first. Aside from Black Rail, of course, which you'll want to field for any boss fight where you don't need the 100% defense gimmick. Short-term, 60% chart CEs will save you some headaches, especially for players who don't have the full suite of chart supports yet. Winter Crystal is relatively accessible as a 4-star generic option, though it doesn't do anything sexy in the damage department. Knights of Marines also has 60% starting charge, but you need to limit break it. Then again, if you have a max limit broken Knights of Marines, then you're almost certainly an old head who has all the bells and whistles. Either that or you got scammed out of a few thousand Saint Quartz on one of these Squirturia banners. Good servant, but those banners are an absolute black hole of capital. For passives, Tlaloc has Territory Creation EX for a nice chunk of free arts performance. Problem, she has one arts card. Okay, well, Waterside Business gives crit damage on near water terrain, there we go. Remember how she could make it rain? Oh, that's her pretender form, never mind. Capital of the Moon gives very slight quick arts and crit damage buffs. Also 200 party damage reduction. I think Capital of the Moon is a microcosm for all the problems that Summer Tenochtitlan has. She tries to mix up flavors that she just can't balance. And the worst part is that a lot of what she does has been done better in the past. For an AoE quick tank, Andromeda has plenty of her own problems, but she can at least lean on class advantage some of the time. By comparison, a Mooncancer only gets defensive advantage against Avengers, a type of enemy you generally don't fight in bulk. So hypothetically, it'd be better if this defensive Mooncancer could use invulnerability instead, maybe with an arts bent. Oh wait, they did that with Jineko already. And they're doing it again with BB Dubai. As an attacker, Summer Tenochtitlan spends a ridiculous amount of energy pretending to check all the boxes. Think about it. On paper, she has party buff / utility, party charge, and an anti-buff. Sounds like a recipe for multi-core shenanigans. But in reality, none of these elements deliver what they promise. That very specific anti-buff often fails to align with their use cases, and as a farmer, she's doubly encumbered by that battery. Party batteries are nice in concept, but only if their user doesn't need an excessive amount of help to do their own job. Tenochtitlan is almost guaranteed to draw resources in a multi-core setup, resources that would be better spent on your single target attacker. So here's the big question. What the fuck is she good for? I don't think there's a single time in this game's history where I thought, oh, I'm really glad I 120'd Summer Tenochtitlan. She's perfect for this scenario. I'm starting to suspect the scenario in question doesn't exist. Every time I used her for anything, I had to consciously ignore an obviously better alternative just to fuck around with bunny girls on the moon. This kit is so incoherent that it could have been released during Epic of Remnant and it would have gotten a lukewarm reception. What a waste of a good design. Thanks for watching, lads. I've got a stacked schedule this week on stream. Suikoden on Wednesday, Jackbox with subscribers on Friday, Archetype Inception on Saturday, possibly with more BB rolls, depending on how a few things shake out, and Azrael rolls on Sunday. Who's Azrael? Well, you might know him by his other name, First Hassan. You won't want to miss it. Twitch.tv/Finotaisen. I get underway at 3 p.m. Pacific time. See you there.